Welcome to the AdSkills podcast. On our podcast, we only interview paid traffic experts who are producing consistent, sustainable results for clients across multiple verticals and a bunch of different offers. Our goal is for you to learn their keys to success and connect with people who can help you produce results for your business. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if we can do it if you can't do it too. Today's guest is Jason Stogsdill, who's an absolute Google Display Network monster. Jason's been a part of the AdSkills family for about 3 years. And in this episode, I'm excited for you to learn how he got into media buying, the types of results he's producing for clients across the Google Display Network, and how you can connect with him so he can drive results for you too. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to the good stuff. Hey, Jason, thanks so much for joining us today. Really excited to have you here. I know that you've been crushing it on Google Display Network for a long time with your clients, really basically helping them diversify, getting off just having Facebook as a one-legged stool, and really demystifying kind of the black box of Google Display Network that no one thinks works. So I'm really excited to kind of help all our listeners understand what it is that you do and the types of results you've been able to help people generate. But before we get into that, I just want to talk a little bit about the path that got you here. Can you just tell us a little bit about where you were before media buying and really what got you into it?
Sure. So if we go way back to what even got me into marketing, I started off, wanted to be a filmmaker. So I was deep into video production, and, I thought, well, I have to make money with this. So that got me into marketing, doing, commercials and stuff for people. So I started working in commercial advertising years ago. And then it kind of brought me into the general marketing world, where I started trying to do everything for clients. I'm a marketing agency, so I'll do a website for you, do branding and all this different stuff. And then, over time, I think I just got more interested in media buying because I felt like that's, where the day-to-day action was. I kind of like to see those measurable results coming in every day and pull those levers. Over the last several years, I've just narrowed down into media buying and, stopped doing stuff with building funnels and stuff like that after kind of realizing that, when you start working with some bigger companies, you see that you don't have one person wearing all hats. It's like you really need specialized people. So that's kind of how I went down that rabbit hole.
That's awesome. So I know Google Display Network's kind of your network, that's your focus. Well, you also run traffic on other networks, right?
Yeah, I've ran about every source of traffic. I've ran email traffic, I've ran native, I've ran Facebook, I've ran networks that people have never heard of. I could probably even name some that you'd never heard of. You probably know them by now, but yeah, I think you go through this phase where, you just want to try everything because you don't really know until you try. And then I think a media buyer will sort of gravitate to what they like. And there's different factors at play. But I started just gravitating toward display network for, various reasons.
Yeah. Can you just share a little bit? I wanted to get into your results here in a second, but what is it about the display network? Is it the fact that no one else is really operating there? What's kind of the things that allow you to say, hey, this is really the opportunity that I can help other people with?
Yeah, so I really had to think about this a lot. So one thing is the size. When you think about the scale, I like to work with clients where they have a broad market offer, so can scale fairly large. So Display Network has millions of placements. You're on the open web, but also the controllability. I've ran a lot of native, and when you run native, you feel like it's more rudimentary. Like you don't have a lot of dials and levers to hit. And an Agora media buyer once told me that, if you can run GDN, you can run anything because all the controls and levers are like a 747 jet. You're controlling, the demographics and, down to precise placement. So it's nice to have a lot of control, and the fact that they really, they have a lot of logged in users. So they collect a lot of data on people. So it's wanting to go large, but having the ability to dial things in and control it very precisely. And, as their algos are getting better, kind of having the advantage of that as well. So I thought, when I was running a lot of different native networks, I was on calls a lot with reps, and it got overwhelming. So I thought, all right, I could just get really far just by focusing 90% of my efforts on display and kind of shut a lot of other opportunities out, even though they seem like, like, I'm interested in that, but I could just stay in display for a long time and probably push those results pretty far.
Awesome. So one thing that you said there that I want to kind of pull out is the types of clients or offers that you work with are mass market, right? Business to consumer, big opportunities. That's typically the best clients that you're looking for.
Exactly. And the way I look at it very simply, is like consumer versus niche is I say, if I looked out at my neighborhood, like would Sally, John, and Joe, like, would this be something they would buy, like the general kind of consumer, and not like something so micro niche that something Justin Brooks said way back that kind of stuck with me. He said that he likes to have a long runway on campaigns because you put in all this work and then you could hit a point where you've tapped the whole market out, but you put in the same amount of work, and then you'd like to think that you could just keep scaling it and keep getting it bigger, because campaigns are, there's a lot of work that goes into them. So I kind of like to think I'm not contained by, like, I've just burned through the whole market.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. So thank you very much for explaining that. I love hearing how people kind of got from where they started all the way into the media buying niche that they're in now. So before we get to your results, because I really want to dive in there and allow people to understand, just as a selfish, perspective, how has AdSkills helped you get to this point? Like, what has been valuable for you? What are the things that you really have appreciated and felt are really important to your development?
Well, I think I could gush here a bit and say that, AdSkills has completely put me on the map. Really, like, I felt like before I was just kind of floundering. Like, I just, didn't really know how to get big clients. So, like, all the clients I'm working with now, I can trace that back to AdSkills. A lot I've got through there directly. I did the certification. So, just the frameworks and everything that I do are, A to Z AdSkills. And then, besides, like, the connections and getting the clients, like, once you get large clients, then you feel like there's more at stake. And then if I only had to look to myself and maybe a couple other people for the answers, like, I don't think I would have the confidence to do it. And I'll give you just like a real example. Just the other day with you in ProLeague, I'd spent about $300 on a campaign and the results were terrible. And I was modeling it after another campaign, and everything made logical sense. I'm like, I'm doing everything the same, and I'm even have some insight, but you gave me a tip that basically it turned that whole thing around. And it was a very subtle thing. It was so nuanced that, it was the difference of, like, having to say, all right, that's it. And then, continuing to go. So I think in media buying, you run into those things like every other day. So if you took AdSkills away from me now, I don't know what I would do. Like, I would be hurting. And it's not just you answering questions, it's other people with, in-depth expertise. And I think it's like for all of us, when you get stuck on something, that's where you go to get unstuck. And I tell my clients too, I'm like, I'm going to ask John Belcher this. If it's like an attribution question, I'm like, he's an expert. So like, if you ever watched that show Pawn Stars, where they say, he says, I'm going to call on my friend who's an expert.
Absolutely.
So that's what you do in AdSkills too. So, and it really just keeps getting better. So, I could keep going on, but maybe that's.
No, that's great. Thank you very much. And for those listeners who don't understand, ProLeague is actually a Slack channel that we have. It's a part of AdSkills that we found. The courses are huge to get people started and headed down the right path. But that ongoing support is really the piece that's super important. So we've got about 800 paid traffic professionals in there. And I'm always trying to find the cream of the crop that we can continue to add to say, hey, can you come add value? Can you talk about conversion rate optimization or Google Display Network or algorithms or Google AI, all of those different things across all these different traffic channels? That's really our support piece, is our Slack channel, to make sure that people who've, kind of tapped out on course information, now it's all about the nitty gritty. That's really what makes the difference. So thanks so much, Jason, for sharing that. I appreciate it. Now, let's get into the stuff that people are really excited to hear about. So you've done some really cool stuff. I'm just going to tease this here for a second. The biggest thing I think that's really impressive to me with what you've done is you've helped clients that have always been on that one-legged stool with Facebook, who have tried YouTube, have tried GDN, and ended up losing a lot of money. That's the number one thing we hear is, like, we know there's a lot of volume there that we just end up losing money. And that's something you've helped clients in this B2C big market space finally start to leverage Google Display Network in a very effective way. And I think the words that you use most are, it's consistent. So they're producing day after day at the same volume. Also, your CPAs are almost exactly the same. So can you kind of talk about that level of consistency, how you get people from zero to however many $1,000s a day, and then also the paper conversions where they're paying the same CPA for everything so they can really optimize their funnels?
Sure. Yeah. And I can give you an example of a client in the health niche. I won't like get into the specifics of their offer or anything, but they were on Facebook and I think they had spent maybe $400,000 or so and were doing really well and enjoying the benefits of, that Facebook algo just helping them sell their product. And then, they got banned for whatever numerous reasons people can get thrown off of Facebook, and then traffic basically stopped. So that business was on hold, like there was just no traffic coming to it. So they found me.
Just interrupt for a second. I think the piece that's important right now is how many people are struggling with this on Facebook right now. We talked about this in ProLeague yesterday. With the costs rising, the algorithm changes, bans going down, a lot of people are on this one-legged stool, right? It's a very big problem for a lot of people. And I think that's kind of where what you do really subs in very nicely.
Yeah, yeah. And I've met a lot of people like this where their business just kind of comes to a halt, because there's just no more traffic. And these guys were very sophisticated direct response marketers who I learn a lot from as well. But really the reason they wanted to work with me, like they work with clients as well, and this is sort of like a business they're building on the side, as they split test heavily, but you can't do that if there's no traffic. So they wanted not just some waves of affiliate traffic, because you can't really split test very well with that. You have to have consistent traffic, and yet like their CPA was pretty strict because they're self-funding this business. So like what you mentioned about the consistent CPA and paper conversions, I think it was like late last year that Google introduced paper conversion bidding. So you can, like in this case, it's a $50 CPA we pay, which, they figured in like at $50, they're pretty much where they want to be at break even. If they go beyond that, they're losing money, and it would, a high volume of sales at that level would deplete their bank account as well. So they need to stay pretty strict on their CPA. They allowed some testing at first, but Google will allow you to choose a CPA. And if they think it's adequate, I guess, you have to test different ones, but they will start sending large waves of traffic to it. I've seen up to 100,000 clicks a day. So like if it didn't convert, you haven't paid for any of that traffic, which like when you're talking about the size of Google Display and how you can lose money, like I call it, just digging a deep hole. Like let's say you're trying to dig down for some treasure and you just keep digging deeper and deeper and deeper, and you don't exactly know how
where's the bottom?
Deep, where the bottom is, right? So I heard I believe Katie Vogel at Agora say that it's very expensive to test display because it is so vast, and you're trying to find those winners, but you got to spend a lot of money to get there. So what I see that Google has done with paper conversions is they're allowing you to do all this testing really on their dime, because they're sending the impressions at their risk. So like this client, we started in October, and they're still going to this day getting that exact CPA that they want. So and it's just going very consistently. The sales are about the same every day. So it's like peace of mind for them. And I know like as media buyers, like you can have days where you're crushing it, even on display, like if you're going manual bidding, and then days where you're like, oh man, was there something wrong? And, your blood pressure is up and down, but, theirs is just consistent, and Google is kind of like taking that risk. So I think it's a huge opportunity. And I think it's just where they are overhauling their platform to probably, make it more algo driven, so people can take advantage of this a little more easily, and like with less risk, and just encouraging more people to get involved is kind of the benefit that I see of paper conversion bidding.
Totally. So let me just take a step back there and explain for people that aren't familiar with Google Display Network. So what you just said is, at this point, paper conversion allows Google to foot the bill on all of the clicks. So you're not paying for clicks. You're only paying when you make a conversion. They're sending waves of traffic from desktop, from tablet, from mobile, from apps, from websites, from absolutely everywhere. And they're trying to figure out what converts. So if you have an offer that's working, now they're saying we only get paid when we generate sales. So the testing is essentially is free. That's huge. The next piece was you talked about that consistency. Once the algorithm starts to get, we call it a sniff of the gold. Once it's on the gold trail, now it's just going to keep going deeper and deeper and finding more customers, which is massive. You're getting a consistent traffic volume so you can do your split testing. The last thing I wanted to mention is, or ask you this question. I have a YouTube campaign that's been running for 3 years that I've never changed the ad. I imagine on GDN that you're rotating some stuff occasionally, but how have you seen the difference in creative iteration of how much you have to actually play with it versus Facebook where you're playing with it all the time? What does that look like for you?
So you made me just circle back to another thought of like, why did I want to get into Google Display too? And that's another reason is just the being able to cycle through so much creative. Like, oh, I'm getting a $20 CPA, and then a week later, it's like the creatives burn out, and then some agencies I think are set up to deal with that. That was something I consciously was like, I don't want to have to deal with that right now. But yeah, I've had campaigns, running for months with pretty much the same creative. But another thing we can sprinkle in there is they're really pushing their responsive ads now, where you'll add in 15 images, you can add in 5 videos, 5 headlines, 5 long headlines, and Google's basically, split testing all of those. So let's say that runs for like a month, it'll tell you if something's performing the best, good, or low. So what you can do, to keep optimizing is you can go replace those low performers. Like let's say you've got two images that like one is good and one is best. So that becomes your control. So all the others are basically junk. You can go in and replace those. But I think maybe what you're driving at too is that it's the size of the network and so many placements that, like when you go do research on AdBeat to search competitors, you'll see people running the same placement, the same ad, and for like 4 years, and it's still running today. So that's part of the research I'll do too for clients. Is I'll go, all right, I'm going to make a list of every placement and all the creative that has ran for like a year or longer and is still running today. So, you could look at something that ran for like 2 weeks and they stopped it. So that tells you it's not working. But something that's been running for like 4 years, I wish there was a way to do that on YouTube, but like you said, your ad's been running, but maybe I don't even realize how vast, YouTube and display are like, but they are.
Yeah, it's amazing the amount of inventory. So Google Display Network covers, it kind of makes Facebook look like a kiddie pool. It's like 60% bigger than Facebook's reach. On top of that, now you're talking about YouTube, which I know you're starting to get into. And once you figure out the targeting on GDN, it's pretty much the same thing on YouTube. Now you're just using a video creative versus an image creative. That's where stuff gets really exciting. And I think the piece that's so important for people that are interested in working on GDN to understand is, once again, the amount of labor once you get something up and running is so much lower. Actually, my first ever performance GDN campaign was using the Browning banana ad. It says like 5 foods men should never eat. And that ad has been used by companies all across the weight loss space. I'm pretty sure they said the last estimate that ads had like $500 million in ad spend on it. And it's across all these different ads, all these different companies. But that goes to show is like you don't have to change the creative all the time, which is something that if you've been doing that on Facebook, it's nice when you go through, you figure out the parameters. Now you start to have something that, once again, level of consistency, predictability. It's not this always having to turn stuff over. I think that's the piece of what you can add people is both diversity and consistency of traffic. I think that's a massive selling point.
Yeah. So like as media buyers, I think it's, at least to fit my personality, you need to eliminate things that are likely to drive you crazy, which is I see like constantly refreshing creative. Like after you've figured out a great piece of creative, to constantly have to change it. Like honestly, I just don't like that. And, to address something else you said, about the targeting on GDN and YouTube, I was very analytical about getting into this. Like I thought, well, dive into GDN because I'm also interested in YouTube. And I looked at it the same way because all the targeting's the same. And, the only difference is the placements, a website placement versus a video placement. Whereas like Facebook, it's all together in one feed. And people usually don't just say, I only do Facebook video or I only do Facebook images. You do Facebook. So like Google, they just split them out, but I look at it as the same. It's just a piece of video creative. So for someone that's like interested about YouTube, like you have to consider that you need to be making video creative. So if you're not quite there to say, all right, I'm not really ready to start helping clients like produce all this creative, or, the clients I'm likely to get, that's a problem for them. Do GDN, understand the audiences and the targeting, and then, kind of just inspect YouTube like I'm doing now. I'm running a few YouTube campaigns for clients that have supplied me with the creative, but it's all the same targeting though. So you can see like when I ran, we just started these YouTube campaigns that are going really well, but some keywords worked on YouTube and I thought, aha, I need to go put those back in my display campaign because it's the same people,
Absolutely. I love it. And I think so that's really important for people to know. GDN is where you typically start because it's the lowest production after a bunch of video assets, but you also have the ability to scale into YouTube. The other thing I want to point out for people is if they're already having success on Facebook and they're using Google Analytics and they have their advertising features turned on, that's basically helping you have a huge head start in your progression, right? Because you understand the audiences that are buying. Now you can really kind of jump the learning curve on what you're doing. I just want to make sure, is that something that you've been utilizing a lot?
Yes, I have. And maybe this is a tip for people that are running Facebook. Not everyone has their UTMs installed. So they could be running a ton of Facebook. Like I've seen people running millions in Facebook that weren't collecting that advertising data. And that advertising data, when you flip that feature on, so let's say someone's running their Facebook ads, they need to be doing UTMs and they need to have their advertising data turned on in Google because you're collecting all the info that's telling you exactly who to target. So you could not be running Google at all, but just be running Facebook, but you're collecting all the data that will tell you how to run your Google ads as well.
Totally. And if you have any questions, dynamic parameters with Facebook make it so easy. You can just pull in the campaign name, the ad group name, and the ad name. It's a very easy fix. We've got a YouTube tutorial on that. So anyway, Jason, this is super helpful of helping people understand the value of the Google Display Network, what it is that you do. So thanks so much for the time today. Last question before we go. How can people get in touch with you? What's the easiest way that you like to operate?
Sure. The easiest way, and it's just been very common that people will hit me up on Facebook Messenger. And, if you're a marketer, business owner, fellow media buyer, I've got plenty of room for more friends. I think I have maybe 1,500 now, but I try to, just network with other marketers. So friend me on Facebook, message me there. Otherwise, email is fine too.
Okay, great. So I'll have a link to your Facebook profile and your email down below so people can get in touch with you. And once again, your client base is typically B2C offers. Any particular verticals that you really specialize in?
I have done a lot of finance offers. So like the Agora type offers where, can be stock investing, stuff like that. That's a niche I'm focusing on a lot. And I've ended up doing a lot in health as well. But I do stuff in just various, info products, B2C info products. So my container now is just B2C, like consumer products, but I have done a lot in finance and health though.
Great. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for the time today. Appreciate it. We'll have people reach out to you using those links below. Hope everyone has a good one. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks again, Jason.
All right. Thanks, John. Appreciate it, man.
If you found this tutorial helpful, make sure you click on the subscribe button on the screen right now. Also, if you'd like to join the Daily Edge and get the daily dose of what's working in paid traffic and tracking, you can text Daily Edge to 44222.